welcome. And you have a great piece. It is called New York Times Claims That Russia Drove Attacks on Linda Sarsour is Nonsense. So let's talk about why you thought this was an important piece to write, because I think it is important.
Basically, because I watch Aaron Mate too much.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes two of us.
Right. Really, what it was is this was a week ago on Sunday. So it was like the big Sunday story. I mean, I don't get the paper New York Times. I don't know if anyone does, but in the old days when we did get the paper New York Times, whatever they put on the front page of the Sunday paper was the big story. And they had this splashed across the front page of the website a week ago on Sunday, and it was really promoted as a big story. And the idea behind it was that, I'm sure many of your viewers will recall the Women's March, which took shape in the weeks and months after the election of Donald Trump in those days of late 2016 and early 2017. And this was sort of a glimmer of resistance, of grassroots mobilization, but it was very quickly hijacked by the Democratic Party, if it was ever even separate from the Democratic Party, which it probably wasn't. But, a lot of people were drawn to it out of, searching for a grassroots way to express their fear, loathing, outrage, whatever, Trump and his agenda. Very quickly, it became mired in internal disputes with the establishment of the Democratic Party, which, of course, wanted to, hijack any independent movement and harness it to, to the sinking ship of the Democratic Party, basically. But there were problems because, some of the leaders or some of the active people were, in some ways going beyond the very centrist or right-wing message of the Democratic Party. And also one of the leaders was Linda Sarsour, a Palestinian-American Democratic Party activist from Brooklyn, who's somewhat controversial among Palestinian Americans even, but none of us would support the vile Islamophobic attacks she was subjected to. And in the context of the Women's March, before the march, which happened, I think, on January 21st or thereabouts, or mid-January 2017, just around the time of the inauguration, liberal Zionist groups, women's groups, were very disturbed because Linda Sarsour had supported the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. So there was already infighting. And Sarsour would then be subjected in the days after the Women's March to just a massive, vicious online campaign, just real dehumanization and vilification. And of course, this actually wasn't just for days, but for years. I mean, it continues today, but it was more intense, previously than it is now. This was coming from all directions. It was coming primarily from the Israel lobby. It was coming from the Democratic Party. It was coming from, websites linked to Hillary Clinton. It was coming from the Anti-Defamation League, from the Zionist Organization of America. And of course, it was coming from the anti-Muslim right. Now, the New York Times, this piece, basically, the premises of this piece are actually, yeah, sure, other people were criticizing Linda Sarsour or trolling her or attacking her, but actually, who was really behind this campaign was Vladimir Putin. And so it's just another tedious and tiresome Russiagate thing. Linda Sarsour immediately ran with it. I assume that she I think she's quoted in the story. It's a long story. When I printed it out, it was 12 pages. So, so she must have cooperated with the story.
Yeah.
So she immediately promoted it as if it were true. Other groups promoted it, like the Council on American Islamic Relations promoted it. And this is months after, like, even the mainstream media had to admit that the Steele dossier is complete bullshit after its main source was indicted for repeatedly lying to the FBI. And still, the New York Times is trying to pass off this garbage as journalism. So, I don't know if you want to go any deeper than that into it, but that's kind of the overview.